My name is Flavia, and I sit within the investment team at Octopus. I joined a little over a year ago now, joining from Plug and Play. So a ventures team that was also doing early stage investments, but also working a lot with corporate partners. And a lot of the companies that we were working with there were already companies that are operating in the cross field of multi-utilities, but also novel materials, going across to cement manufacturers and production. And ultimately that just opened the doors for a lot of interesting conversations around climate and how we wanted to ultimately address climate from a hardware perspective, but more specifically from a deep tech perspective, which was ultimately there's just this variety of problems that we want to be tackling, and those problems can be tackled only with, say, deep science. What was also really interesting that then has proven to be really useful now has been assessing technologies from a corporate perspective and how and what it is about those technologies that has to be very well explained from a startup's perspective so that it can be picked up by a corporate. And it also allows, obviously, to view technologies, even though, again, deep tech hardware, how can this be matched against what corporates are looking for, their needs, their budgets, what they explicitly share in the public domain as to a problem that they have, they're experiencing, and how to address that problem with deep tech. We've seen this specifically, for example, with a company that we're working with, well, a company that is a portfolio company now, it's called Pure Affinity. What they are doing is operating specifically on wastewater streams. So what they're targeting is a problem that's been raised within PFAS, which is basically these forever chemicals that are leached into water, or better, leached into water waste streams, and ultimately end up contaminating water streams. So what they're developing is a material that has the capability to absorb these extremely small particles that ultimately, when they leach into water streams, they ultimately contaminate the water streams and ultimately cause various sorts of pollution-related issues. So that's been, again, an interesting play where ultimately we were trying to understand from a consumer, from a corporate perspective, what would ultimately justify and push towards the adoption of this type of material and that type of solution. And it's interesting to know how with this company, just as in many other companies, what ultimately is the push is the regulatory push. And how that push is ultimately coming from certain countries. So say, for example, in their case, the push is actually coming from the States. And it ultimately means that those companies are potentially going to be moving. Part of our mandate as Octopus Ventures is to be focusing specifically on companies that are potentially bringing impact to the UK economy. Because the nature of the fund we invest from is a VCT, which stands for Venture Capital Trust, and ultimately means that the companies, again, that we're backing are companies that ultimately impact on the society. We actually don't operate as a CVC, though we do fall within Octopus Group. Octopus Energy is managed completely separately from the venture fund. So the venture fund is set up as a VCT, which is specifically a UK-specific venture fund setup. Ultimately means that the funds that we raise them from retail investors. For those retail investors to access tax relief, the company that we invest in have to have ties to the UK. That ultimately means that it's both. Companies that have an office set up in the UK are registered as maybe even a foreign entity within the UK, and also have senior employees that are operating from the UK. So be it employees with signing powers of contracts or, again, commercial agreements the company might be getting into. Sometimes we do try to involve people across other funds. So basically imagine Octopus Group as a group that manages multiple funds. There's the funds that are specifically the venture funds. So I sit within a specific team which is called Titan. Then there is a few other funds. There's another fund which is specific to sustainable infrastructure. So say, for example, the companies that we were talking to or listening pitch earlier, in the case of OxDCU, for example, that would be an investment that would fall more easily within the infrastructure type investments. If you consider also who's ultimately decided to back the company, it's Kiko, it's Aramco, so all funds that do invest with a climate angle, but ultimately do have more of an infrastructure mandate. So we also have a group that's specific more on infrastructure, later stages, more de-risk technologies. There's another couple of groups or funds that are also focused more on the energy front, so looking more at electrification of more electric vehicles, or let's say other aspects that could fall more within the energy entity. So there's, I'd probably split the interest focus between ventures team that focuses on 5 different verticals, one being deep tech and biotech, which is one I fall within. And then there's the usual other suspects, which is B2B software, consumer, fintech, health. And then there's the sustainable infrastructure, the energy group, the hydrogen group, and all these have different mandates that are more specific to the verticals that they work in. It's quite broad. Main reason being that a lot of the deep tech mandate is around looking for companies that are looking to commercialize research. And ultimately that research just spans multiple fields. And so, for example, in this year, we've seen companies that were, for example, actually in a similar way to Type 1 Energy, we were engaging with a company that's also in the fusion space, and they were commenting on how they're looking to basically pull together different types of innovation across multiple fields, being additive manufacturing, be it quantum algorithms specifically for the design of novel stellarators. And so just this combination of technologies that ultimately should allow faster progress of what's happening in the fusion space. So that's one space, and obviously the counter argument to fusion, which everybody knows, and it's obviously tied to the timeline that it will actually take these incredible innovations to actually come online. And I'm super keen to figure out that as well in a second moment. But other things that we're seeing is also within the recycling space. We've been recently engaging with a company. This is actually also off the back of the work that we were doing at Plug and Play. So a lot of the companies that we were engaging with back then, but are also still bringing online interesting solutions, are within recycling or from e-waste, or recycling from what's happening within the mining space. And I think that what we're seeing there as well is a consolidation of experience from the companies that have raised in the past 4 or 5 years, and how that experience can potentially translate to these novel companies that are also looking to bring online solutions. So one of the companies that we were engaging with recently that was super cool is this company that is looking to extract specific minerals. So basically focused on a multiple step process that does the extraction of certain minerals from waste streams, and then reaggregation, and then reutilization of those extracted minerals for novel applications, and how they basically are looking to focus on in ensuring the quality of those minerals, the qualities of those renovated or recovered materials for applications in batteries, applications within, say, novel products where they can still qualify as virgin materials. And then obviously there's a different question mark there, which is around how operators and players in the mining space, how eager they are to engage with companies at this stage that ultimately do represent a huge level of risk and are not exactly the type of culture that you're used to in those environments. Also another one to pick up on. I think what we're seeing is there's more companies that are coming out of the research phase. And we're also seeing some really interesting cases of successes of companies that were at the research phase maybe 10 years ago, were capable of raised multiple rounds, are now valued in billions. So say, for example, Jetty Resources, and the fact that they are now translating that knowledge, that experience into other companies is It's great to see. What we're noticing is that more and more there's the knowledge around building really strong advisory, like scientific advisory boards within companies. And maybe there is, well, I'd say probably there's a balance between teams that are more mature teams that are coming together. So more and more we see maybe a less mature CEO paired with a more mature CEO. So somebody who has the network within the industry, the experience of fundraising within the space. But then what we're seeing as well is a lot of these advisory boards. And so ultimately, maybe if you're lacking some conviction around the capability of the founder to ultimately deliver just because of experience of building companies ultimately, and they get validation through this extremely experienced 20 plus years professional in the space, then that helps in gaining conviction around the founder. And you know that ultimately they'll have the exposure to the knowledge, to the experience, and so forth. Yeah. And so I think it's also, we're seeing more and more of that pairing, and so decreasing maybe the inexperienced component. But yes, definitely, it's different when you have a team in front of you of seasoned professionals and the peace of mind that that gives. Towards the beginning of the year, there were less companies that were coming out to fundraise. As we approached the summer, initial conversations started to generate with a lot of companies saying that they were looking to open up or consider going out to raise in September. And so now what we're seeing is that there's more and more companies raising at seed Series A. I'd definitely say there has been a difference in the way in which we're approaching, engaging with those companies, the type of expectations that we have at the stages at which we're investing, i.e. the type of traction that we're expecting for them to be having with the companies that we're engaging with, the type of reference calls that we also want to do, and how we want to feel comfortable with the responses that we're getting from those calls and those partners, those potential initial customers that they have. And so there's definitely, I think, a level of, I wouldn't say further due diligence because it hasn't changed in the measure. It's changed in the type of expectations that we're putting on the companies. And so maybe it's more, let's see where previous capital or where the amount of capital that's already in the company's bank, where that will bring the company, and then go out to raise. That said, I do still think that we have all these hype cycles that will still see companies that are operating within those cycles go out to raise, even if they haven't hit certain criteria and certain metrics. And so that then just lies back onto, do you want to be the one investor that is left out of the game, or do you want to pick it up and then see where it goes? I think we are extremely approachable humans. I think there's a bit of this misconception around VCs being unapproachable or unpleasant or unclear with their thinking and their reasoning. And I think that one thing that I've seen since joining is that there's a lot of this rhetoric around sharing as much valuable feedback as possible. So that will ultimately allow a company to come back and to pitch their reviewed proposition in the light of the input that we've shared. And so I think that that is a large part of who the team is and how the investment team wants to pitch itself. There's such a great difference between pitching skills of who's been raising at different stages. So basically, if it's research teams that are pitching for the first time in front of the investors, as opposed to pitching in front of other academics, I think that there is, you can just see the whole journey for somebody who's been exposed more and more often to doing the pitch practices and how the presentation is then refined. I do think that the companies were extremely spot on as of considering what you guys are working on in terms of Energy Week and Energy Week being different types of technologies and how those complement the energy ecosystem. I think those companies were covering all of that.